Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It's baseball season, and you know what? As much as this guy's Mr. BaltimoreRavens.com and all that stuff, I still think of him as a baseball guy, and he reminded me of that being his Facebook friend this week when he has unearthed those crazy old audio tapes of his times with the Orioles and telling the oral history of the Baltimore Orioles. He has written books in the National Football League, and there's one current right now, as well as Cal Ripken Streak. He's one of my mentors and friends, and, we're going to talk Joe Flacco and Earl Thomas and Mosley and all that good stuff with John Eisenberg. But I do want to say it's baseball season, and I did love your I found some old tape stuff. You've intrigued me, John Eisenberg.
Well, it's not that I found them. I know they're in there. They've been in there a long time, and actually my wife's tired here to have me talk about them because it is 20 years ago I put up on Facebook. I started working on a project, an oral history of the Orioles, and I had signed a book contract. So that turned out to be quite a project. I went around the country. I interviewed everybody. This is 1999, 2000. Anybody that was big in the history of the team that was still alive, I interviewed them. I have tapes. The book came out in 2001. It's called From 33rd Street to Camden Yards.
And by the way, most of them were alive then, right? We didn't lose a lot of people by then. Maybe Belanger, McNally, a couple. But there were, the people that were alive 20 years ago was incredible, right?
Oh, yeah. Earl Weaver, Mike Flanagan, Elrod Hendricks, Frank Robinson. The list just goes on and on. And it did strike me lately. It was like, wow. I have these tapes. They're little micro cassettes. They're sitting in a shoebox. They have been for years. And every once in a while, I got a lot going on, Nestor, and every once in a while I think, boy, I should do something with those tapes. And I just have it's been on the back burner forever. And I did mention it on Facebook the other day and got quite a reaction. And it did strike me that, wow, maybe it's about time to do something with these tapes because it was an incredible experience that I went through, needless to say. I don't take it lightly. It was pretty cool, and these tapes are evidence of that, and I probably should do something with them here pretty soon.
How much time did you spend? Because I was working on a book 10 years ago, and I abandoned the project on leaders in Baltimore, coaches, managers, people that led Baltimore teams and what happened to their lives, and even people like Roger Goodell, who was a bat boy for the Baltimore Orioles. People don't know that. But all of these tentacles of the Don Shulas that went off and the Howard Schnellenbergers and just lefty. Just people that led people. And I had wonderful conversations. And I had the last conversation of Earl Weaver's, the last thing he ever did with anyone media was with me. And we sat on a couch. He said, "Kid, I'll give you 15 minutes." 45 minutes later, my wife's arm's hurting. And so I can only imagine when you say to Earl, "Give me an hour," and 4 hours later, his wife's making you orange juice and tea, and you're sitting there, because some of these stories linger longer, and a lot of these guys don't get asked about these stories as much as maybe you think. And when you get their mind working, telling old memories and old stories, it's amazing what can come from it, right?
Oh, it's really amazing, of course. And Earl, I went down to Florida, I interviewed Earl.
By the way, I'm not editing that. I'm telling you right now, whatever Earl said, I could not just put that with an FCC license on the air. That would have to be heavily edited, I would think, yes.
No, I'll have to go back and listen to that one. But what I do remember is he was at wherever, at Miami Lakes or wherever that was. It was on a golf course, and I went up to breakfast with him. I showed up early, we went to breakfast, and we're driving up there, and he goes, "So am I getting paid for this?" And I'm like, "No, Earl, you are not getting paid for this." And he goes, "Okay." And so then he was the only one who brought that up, I might add. But a great storyteller, just the best, honestly, and great insights in that interview that I still remember to this day.
Let me tell you what happened, John. I'll tell you, John. Yeah. He is John Eisenberg, and, of course, at Be More Eisenberg and BaltimoreRavens.com. All right, I'll go to baseball in a minute, and we'll get to the Orioles because, there's not much to say about the season, but I do want your 50,000-foot view, and I know you're not covering the team, but we do cover the Ravens. And I'm tumultuous, whatever the word would be of the off season, and certainly those hours where Wink Martindale's wife was checking in with him every hour to make sure he was still standing upright when the whole team walked out the door on Tuesday, and we spent Wednesday talking about the rebuild, and I still have the notes here. This is the best part. I've been keeping my notes in my strategic factory book here lately. Transitional, test tube offense, rebuild. We started using those words, and then by like Wednesday afternoon, they spent another $80 million, and here we go again. Right?
Yeah. Those were significant signings in what they said, and I actually wrote a column about that. Because, it was a real roller coaster there. Suddenly, when the news broke, Mosley's leaving, Suggs is leaving. I think those are ones the Ravens didn't necessarily anticipate, especially. I don't know what they anticipated, but they were hoping to keep Mosley. They knew they were going to lose Darius Smith, and they cut Weddle. So, it went from a big, somewhat of a change to a huge change on defense, and you do feel like, well, we don't know where this is going, and it does look like a rebuild situation, and the offense they're already rebuilding. And so, but then suddenly they sign Earl Thomas, and you don't give a guy $55 million, at least that's the printed amount, it's what they, the reported amount. I'm not sure how many guaranteed, but a lot, but he's one of the, he's broken his leg the last couple of years, but when he's healthy, he's like one of the best football players in the NFL, and you don't do that if you have a long-range view. You're trying to win now. Mark Ingram, it's the same thing. They really are all in on this running thing, and here's a bruising running back. So, they're definitely trying to build a team that they think can contend immediately. And there's no doubt the long-range view is in effect, and a lot of that has to do with the salary cap and the kind of contracts they signed here. They don't want much dead money anymore. They don't want to get into a situation like they did with Mosley where a great player hits free agency. They want to nip that in the bud if they can, a year out, maybe even more sometimes. So they're going to change how they do things, and that is a long-range view. That is a long-range approach to changing how they do business economically. But in the short run, 2019, they're still going to try to win, and it's going to be interesting to watch.
All that being said, John, it's not much different than what Ozzie would do, which is say, Sizz, here's the price, dude, and if you really just want to go wear the helmet out there and run around because that's what you want to do, respect. Or as I said, deuces, because that's what Sizz would always say. And the Mosley thing's fascinating to me in that he got a lot more than they would have paid, which is no different than Wagner or Jensen or Asemele or name any other guy, McPhee, any other guy that they felt like, here's the number. Certainly with Weddle, I just think with Weddle it was like, we just need a better player. We love you. We need a better player at that position than what you can be right now, even though you're a coach on the field. God bless you. We're going to move in a different direction. Fascinating to me, John, is that the Browns are now the 6th choice as a Super Bowl. Patriots, Chiefs, Rams, Saints, Bears, Browns. Actually, the 5th choice. They're tied with the Bears. And the Chargers on Vegas boards right now. That's where perception has gone with the Browns and perception on the Steelers at 20 and the Ravens at 30. That there's a different thing going on perception-wise outside of Baltimore, but the reality of then why bring in Earl Thomas? You know what I mean? Then why try to go win 10 games? Why have Lamar Jackson on the cheap contract if you're not going to get a running back to complement? So there has been a building part here that I'm bought in. I'm not bought in that the Browns are a 12-win team, and I'm not bought in that the Ravens are a 6-win team either. And such is that middle life of how much better than 8-8 can you be with a second-year quarterback? No clear-cut Hall of Fame prime guys on your team. Their best player right now is Earl Thomas, and he's a question mark at $55 million coming back from – not a big question mark. I'm bought in. He looked pissed off enough to me last week, John. I think he's going to be fine. I think, he's motivated. I'm not worried about him. But, he's going to be their best player, and it's a heart transplant for the team, really, really.
Well, it is a hard transplant, and you have to take each of those. First off, the Browns, how many people do you think are putting money on that, the 6th leading choice? How much money would you be putting on
a lot
the
of $10 bettors who want to have a ticket that if it actually happens, literally, right? But,
Well, I would say this. Good luck to them. It's the Browns have made a lot of moves. It's very exciting. We'll and I think it's great. It's great for the AFC North. It's fun. And those people in Cleveland, going up there for years, those clinically depressed football fans, they deserve it to have some fun. And so
we have Strategic Factory. They have the Factory of Sadness, is what we have. So
yes. It's horrible, and so good. It's a lot more fun. I think the Browns-Ravens will be a primetime game this year. That's my prediction, and when the schedule comes out. And so that's pretty neat. But
they're going to make us go out there, right?
Yeah, probably. I think in September, right away.
By the way, our city's so bad that I think that they don't want to have night games here anymore. I'm not like that's my prediction is when the schedule comes out, there will not be night games here.
Well, that is not a new development. That has been the case for a number of years here. They've put the Ravens on the road in prime time forever.
And I think that will continue.
Yeah, probably will continue. I'm not sure. I mean, the Browns they've got a lot of playmakers, and let's see how their season goes. It's one thing to set it up. It's another thing to follow through. They've never followed through. And, it will be interesting. I have a hard time. Maybe I'm just old school when it comes to AFC North. I have a hard time thinking, well, okay, so we're burying the Steelers? Is that what we're doing here? And I don't care that Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown are gone. I mean, they didn't have Bell last year, and they had the division cold and choked it away. And,
well, I mean, they had me guys, not team guys, right? Like, that's very, very obvious. And, John, I haven't had you on in a while, but on that Wednesday morning when, all was falling apart here before Earl Thomas and all that stuff, I said to my wife that morning, I'm like, Odell Beckham went to Cleveland, Antonio Brown went to Oakland, and Le'Veon Bell went to the Jets. The three biggest malcontents, in the league went from the Giants and the Steelers, who are these, staid, franchises that don't want that nonsense, to these places where they perennially picked second, third, fourth, or fifth in the draft. And I said, losers go where they lose. And until further notice, when you talk your way out of a good place like Pittsburgh and you can't get along with Mike Tomlin, and you don't want Ben Roethlisberger giving you the ball, and you don't want the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Rooney family picking your players. You want to go to Oakland? You want to go play for the Jets? Bill Belichick had a great line. Seth Wickersham wrote a piece a couple years ago. He reshared it last week out on ESPN about how Belichick negotiates with the agents. And at the end of the day, the agent gets on the line with Belichick, and Belichick's always lowballing, right? And he says to the agent, John, does your guy want to win the Super Bowl? Or does he not? If he wants to go to the Jets, go ahead. We'll go beat him twice a year. He can watch us play in January. You know what I mean? And you can hear Belichick saying that, right? And that's where we are. I mean, this has been an interesting offseason for that, because I'm with you, dude. Let's not bury the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's not bury the good organizations right now, or John Harbaugh, or why they kept him around, or Eric, and why he's running the place right now. They don't have to play the games right now. And I know the Ravens look at this like, we're getting 25 draft picks in the next 15 months. Let's find 12 or 14 real football players and go win the Super Bowl 2 years from now, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're pretty confident in their ability to draft guys. And this instinct just tells me, are you crazy to be burying the Steelers are really good at this. They really, when's the last time they had a losing season? They had a couple of 8-8s under Tom, but they just don't do that. And so they're going to be good. I mean, they've already replaced Bell. And what the guy did Connor Gray, did he go over 1,000 yards? And they have Juju Smith-Schuster waiting to take over. They'll draft some receiver this year. Yeah, it's fool's gold a little bit is what I'm saying, oh, my God, the Cleveland Browns. I mean, and it's nothing against the Browns, but I just think, you can go to sleep on the Steelers and the Ravens to a degree, who won the division, and know what they're doing, how to put good teams on the field. You go to sleep on those teams, I think you'd be sorry.
He is John Eisenberg. He is one of my mentors and friends. Be More Eisenberg is a way to find him out on Twitter. He writes books. You should read them all and buy them all, including the latest on the NFL. It's a good time to be reading an NFL book as I do Phoenix and owners meetings and get ready for baseball and March Madness and then the draft coming up as well. I got to tell you, I wrote my dear Joe Flacco letter, John, and I tried to channel my inner Eisenberg here and my inner Stedman more than anything else. And the exit of Joe Flacco. Some thoughts for you watching him stand on a stage with John Elway, holding a Broncos helmet, and talking about how miserable he was last year.
Well, Joe is honest, and So Flacco. I'll say this: I'll miss him. I think it was a little strange watching him. Needless to say, it's going to be even stranger watching him on the field in the fall. I don't blame the Ravens for doing what they did, moving on, giving it a shot with a new guy. I think they had a long window of opportunity with Joe. We don't even need to go down that rabbit hole and discuss whether they surrounded him with enough players. I mean, you can go on and on with that.
Well, we're going to find out, though, right? That was sort of my challenge. Is like he's got this cool legacy. He won a Super Bowl here. That's the past. Yep. The last 6 years, not so good. The fact that they threw him out of here for the 113th pick for the draft because they didn't want to pay him that money anymore. They didn't think he was worth it. They didn't believe in him. I mean, from his perspective, he kind of got a little bit of a raw deal from a football side, but he made $150 million bucks, and he's going to go out there and play. And now it's what happens to the Ravens and what happens to the Broncos, right? Yeah. And that's the part of the book that's still unwritten. And I'm fascinated because I found really sound football people who really believe Joe Flacco is going to win a playoff game or 2 or 3 or 5 in Denver, that he's not going to go there and have some kid they draft next month start for him in week 8 and go never be heard from and go be Mark Rippon and run off into the sunset.
Yeah, well, we will find out. Always with Joe, I think he's not a Tom Brady who's just going to carry the team. I mean, he does need some receivers. I don't think Denver's group is particularly strong. It is a good franchise, though. They know how to win. They just won a Super Bowl a few years ago. It was a good landing spot for him. Did he get a raw deal here? I don't think there's any doubt. Just from a football perspective, I mean, the Ravens did what they did. I don't blame them. You could see it happening. I wrote, on the team website, I wrote he deserved a better ending. And I think, and that sailed through, by the way, and just ran. So
less than fond farewell, right? I mean, literally, for a Super Bowl, for a guy that was the modern day Johnny U here, who delivered on that promise of playoff games, big wins, Super Bowl wins, ball in Lee Evans' hands, goes up to Foxborough and doesn't piss down his leg, gets a 2-touchdown lead there. Had them going to the playoffs until Brown reached the ball out, had them going to the playoffs until, coverage broke down in the back end against the Bengals. I mean, it's amazing. You could write a really positive story if you and I are watching him play in a Super Bowl in Miami next year, right? Like, literally, They would be redemptive, and that's not above Joe. And I saw Joe pretty pissed off. You know what I mean? Like, I think Joe's pissed off, really pissed off.
Well, he definitely is. I mean, he's a very prideful guy, and from the minute he walked in, he was kind of this all-shucks kid, under the radar, as you well know, and people around him know. The dirty secret on Joe Flacco is he's really high on his own abilities, really high, and has been from the beginning. And that was even coming out of Delaware.
John, I remember drinking an iced tea with him 6 years ago in Audubon, New Jersey, in his hometown bar during March Madness. We were drinking iced tea and having sandwiches, and he stopped eating and looked at me dead in the eye, and he's like, "We win a lot of effing games around here." Like, literally, like, whoa, woo, like, now I'm in the huddle with you, you know what I mean? He's like, we do a lot of winning around here, brother, you know what I mean? Like, so, and like, that was in year 6, after making the playoffs 5 years in a row and putting the ball in Lee Evans' hands, right, literally, and now he's in his hometown, a Super Bowl champion. We win a lot of games around here, and I would still say the last few years, we've won a lot of games around here. I mean, not as much as we want to, but this thing's never gone off a cliff around here with Joe Flacco. I think we're all wondering what's going to happen with this. Is no sure thing, this Lamar Jackson experiment, for sure.
No, absolutely, it's not a sure thing. I mean, I do. I've talked to a lot of football people that think, it's an interesting risk worth taking. This is one of the fastest, pure speed, just flat out unbelievable playmaking speed that the NFL has seen. And I have people that are on the practice field with him and in different roles and telling me, oh my gosh, I mean, it is worth an investment. I think worth taking a shot. We'll see where it goes. No idea for all the reasons, the throwing and all that. But an unusual and exciting talent, and it's very interesting what they're taking on here, and I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. But having said that about Joe, I mean, what you have to you do have to fly up to 35,000 feet and say, listen, one of the great draft picks in Ravens history, one of the great players in Ravens history, one of the best dudes in Ravens history. It's a great legacy. And, there was so much noise about him during the years that he played, and a lot of it was deserved and all this. But, it will be a long and sweet, and you see that he was a great guy in how he handled this exit. Because, he goes to Denver and admits he was miserable and all that, but he never did it here. He put the team first, and it's really the ultimate parting gift because he let that thing play out last year without making noise. And what's really the compliment to Joe is we would expect no less because he is a class act, will continue to be, and in that respect, and in many respects, Denver's lucky to have him.
John Eisenberg, we're lucky to have him. He's Be More Eisenberg. You can find him out on Twitter. Find him wherever books are sold, and his NFL book. We'll plug away on that real quick, and then we'll do a little baseball here, John. How's the book doing? We got Father's Day coming up. I mean, it's sort of a timeless story of the National Football League. I mean, there's no bad time to read that book, right?
No. The name of the book is The League. It's about really how the NFL got started and struggled for many years. It focuses on the owners that carried it. And a lot is going on with this book, Nestor, because as we're entering, this is going to be the 100th regular season. And the NFL is going to be there was a Super Bowl ad, and there's a lot going on with the history. And here I have in this book really telling the origin story and the first season. And so it's really where it all begins. I've actually been in touch with people in the league, and we'll see where or how this book is part of that 100th thing, but there may be a little bit of a tie in there, which would be great. And I think it's appropriate because when you go back and look at the very beginning of the league, it's a lot different than it is now. So we'll see where it goes.
I know it's the 100th year because I saw the commercial, John. It's a hell of a commercial.
Yeah, it is.
Baseball, Orioles, 50,000 feet. You're sitting out in Towson. You and Wick love you some baseball, and I love me some baseball, and there's not going to be much baseball here to love, and they're putting Elias and Hyde out on the front of all of this, and the city's empty, and nobody's coming downtown, and I'm doing Baltimore Positive and all that stuff. But for the team and for opening day and for playing the Yankees and even if they get off to a little bit of a positive start, we all know where this is going. What are you looking for? How much baseball are you planning on watching this year? My answer to a lot of people, from my perspective, is less than I've ever watched, and I feel that from a lot of people who love baseball, that it's no longer a joke. It's no longer we'll get better when they get better and wake us up. It's just sort of like, I'm paying less attention to it until they give me a reason to pay attention to it. I might show up on bobblehead night. Yeah,
there's no doubt. This year is not what the story is. It's a long-range view. It's going to be, minimum of 3 years probably. I will be watching a little. I stopped watching last year. It was unwatchable. And so but before that, I was watching a lot, almost every game. And I will not be watching every game, but I will clue in. I'm curious as to see. I'm watching this. I'm curious to see what these guys do. It's very interesting to have brought in these guys. I'm kind of okay with it. I'm on board with what they're doing.
Oh, I think they get the baseball side right. Leave it alone. Now, that being said, where's Brady Anderson? You know what I mean? Like, all of these lingering ownership Angelos issues that they just want to say, well, it's not like that anymore. They don't say that. They say it never was like that, that I'm just making this up, that they've been difficult and made the stadium empty. I think on the baseball side, I can make arguments all day long that I will accept that they're going to get that part of it right if they leave these guys alone. And that's a gigantic if for people like you and I who've reported on such things over the course of time, including these two kids who had roto fever 20 years ago, right, when they were kids. We all remember that, how involved they are or aren't, but I'm worried more about everything else that goes on around it. How it's taken. Are they in the community? Are people coming for bobbleheads? Where's Eddie Murray? Where's Brooks? Because the baseball thing's not going to be all that interesting from a nerd perspective because they can't win, and I can watch that and accept that. Okay, I'll just accept they're getting that part right. But that's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, like, how are they going to survive as a business if nobody goes to the games? That's where I'm looking. And I'm looking like they're 3 years away from having a lease deal here with a stadium in an entirely different landscape than you reported on back in 1989 and 90 when they were building Camden Yards. This is the first time where if there's another city that wants the Orioles, they'll come in and make a case for it.
Yeah, I know you've held that view, and I'll believe all that dire situation when I see it as well. There's no doubt they're going to have challenges drawing people. They will continue to. I do think a lot of fans, maybe some of the savvy fans, realize that it is an interesting thing they've undertaken here, and in the long run, what happens on the field. And you said, you feel that they'll probably, they have a shot to get that right. I think that changes the attitude of a lot of fans. And Are they going to come back in droves? Absolutely not. It's going to be a rough year, maybe a rough couple of years, and their viability we'll see. I mean, they do get there's a lot of money coming in from other places, as there is with all these sports teams. So that remains to be seen. But I do think if you get the baseball part right, everything else happens. Everything else happens as you wish if you win. So it's not easy getting through this, and we'll see how it goes. But I do feel there's enough tradition here, there's enough history, and there's enough fans who like the team and who are interested in this to see if you feel like your team finally was behind the curve in a lot of respects and how baseball was being played. And that probably does a disservice to Buck, who I liked. But,
it kind of does every day, doesn't it? A little bit. When the young guys are like, oh, we never seen this before, and the guys who left here last year were like, oh, man, I'm with the Yankees now. Like, man, it's different around here, So feeling that you can really sense how backwards it was. There's not many people are going to say that, but you and I can say that. Luke says that for sure.
Well, no doubt. And so what happened, bottom line is the Orioles got smarter. Okay, finally. They got smarter, and they're behind the curve on it, but they're catching up. I think they brought in some really smart guys that are good at this. And I do not, and I am as cynical as anybody on interference from above in the Baltimore Orioles, and it was there. I do think this baseball operation is a self-driving car now. That's not a problem to do that when there's no expectation to win. We'll see what happens 3 years down the line. But right now, it is a self-driving car.
Well, there won't be any more late-night phone calls from Peter. There'll be none of that going on.
There's no stakes. So, I for one, am curious. I want to check it out. It's very interesting. They got a Rule 5 kid playing shortstop. They had the first pick in the Rule 5 draft. They took him, and he won the job. The Escobar is gone. They gave it to this kid, and so they really like what they see. It's just interesting to me that they've got all this. I sure hope they draft the catcher from Oregon, or is it Oregon State? I think that's tearing up college baseball. The number one pick in the draft. They're going to have a few players here, new guys, and I for one am interested to
Adley Rutschman, right? Is that it?
Yep, he's just phenomenal. And so, okay, make him a Baltimore Oriole. Put him on the field here in a year or so, and let's see what happens.
Something magic happens. Yeah, man, every time you go. John, you make the magic happen, man. We'll get to a ball game at some point around here, get some football, draft, all that good stuff. Always a pleasure to catch up with you in advance of opening day, talk a little sports with you. Hope to see you soon.
Very good. Me too.
There he goes, John Eisenberg. He's B-More. Eisenberg out on Twitter, and, of course, at BaltimoreRavens.com and The League and wherever cool books are. The Cal Ripken book. All the books are awesome. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am out in the buy. Toyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day. You can listen to our podcast. That's what the kids call it. I call it radio. But either way, it's all out there. It's all brought to you by Toyota.com. I am Nestor. I am on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat and Instagram. And from Arizona back to Baltimore on opening day and March Madness and everywhere in between, we are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.